my two audience members, thank you for joining us. My name is Barbara Deschner Dunnam, and I am here today to give my first speech for our communications class. It's a commemorative speech about Jane Addams. I have three guest members, including my youngest grandchild, Bella, so if you hear things in the background, it's her. When I go about my daily work, I work to achieve the same sense of hope for the people of Eureka Springs as Jane Addams did in Chicago. Jane Addams founded Hull House, one of the nation's first settlement houses and this go-to place today for information about helping families in need. Jane founded the work based on the places she had visited in Europe in the early 1900s. Her lifelong love and work was that of building community. Today we're going to visit the work of Miss Addams and discover the joys and pains of her life, times, and work. Jane was born in Cedarville, Illinois. She had 8 siblings, and her dad was a close personal friend of Abraham Lincoln. This didn't mean that she knew Abraham Lincoln, it just meant that there were a lot of Lincoln influences. Her family were practicing Quakers, and it's that influence she calls upon in her life to her work and personal ethics. Her early days included a battle with a genetic spine deformity that caused her much pain. It was corrected surgically, but spinal deformities continued throughout her life. She was the valedictorian of her women's college and began to study to be a doctor. She thought that would be the journey that she would take. However, her medical issues soon proved too much, and she had to change her plan. She took some time off to visit Europe, and it was while she was there that she discovered her true life calling. Her child and early adult years helped shape her work, beginning with her time in Europe. Jane and her best friend and life partner visited Toynbee Hall, a settlement house at the east end of London. Upon their return to Chicago, the seed was planted, and they rented a large house built by Charles Hall. They stated the purpose of their organization sometime later. They said it was to provide a center for higher civic and social life, to institute and maintain educational and philanthropic enterprises, and to investigate and improve the conditions in the industrial districts of Chicago. Much simpler was the reality of their work. While it was simple, it was the most important work of that time and our time as well. They fed and clothed children. They housed the homeless. They gave parents job opportunities. They battled some of the most important causes like sanitation, cholera, and medical epidemics. They touched every facet of every life of the families they came in contact. Soon Miss Addams found herself involved in many things, sometimes more things than she ever dreamed possible. She was on the Board of Education, the president of the Women's Conference on Charities and Corrections. She led the investigation and reform of garbage, sewage, midwifery, and drug use. In 1910, Miss Addams was awarded the first honorary degree ever for a woman at Yale University. She was the chairman of the Women's Peace Party. She spoke at The Hague and all the while continued her work and love at Hull House. She believed women should be able to vote. She opposed the war, and as a Quaker, it was truly a part of her founding. In 1926, she had a heart attack. This forced her to slow down, but it did in no way stop Jane Addams. In 1931, she was admitted to the hospital with yet another heart attack. This time, while she was in the hospital, she was surprised with a notification. She had been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, the first woman ever to be awarded that prize. Her illness meant she was unable to travel to Oslo to give the speech, but that didn't matter. It left her more time to be here at home in Chicago doing her work. She continued to work from her hospital bed, and it was only 4 years later that cancer took her young life. Jane Addams spent her life literally in the service of others. Her unending passion and belief in the power to make a difference meant now that over a century later, Hull House is a model of change for all Americans, and that's why she's my hero. If my guests could go ahead and walk off screen, please, my audience. Yeah, over that way, walk off screen. Thank you for joining us.